Good afternoon. I know it's been a long day for everyone, so hopefully there's a couple of things that you can learn from this, and we can get to the keynote and then to drinks as quickly as we can. So the title of this presentation is Optimizing Innovation. I think I could give it probably a more blunt title, and it's how to get out of an operational hole so that you can continue to innovate. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, a bit of an operational hole we fell in and how we got out of there, continuing to innovate on the way, but also giving us that ability to innovate as we do now. So who am I? Daniel Schipper. I'm the CIO from Infomedia, 20 plus years in infrastructure and systems, strategy, process, etc. If anything kind of resonates and you want to link me, I've got some social bits and pieces there. Sorry, it hasn't moved. There we go. There's some kind of social connections if you want to connect. Click. So who's Infomedia? Infomedia are a software as a service company. We deliver automotive software across pretty much anywhere anyone drives a car, 186 countries. We've got around 180,000 users. And our software supports the dealers of the major automotive companies. We have an electronic parts catalogue, a service quoting system, and a vehicle health check system. It's critical for the dealer workshops that the software works and gives them accurate information. We're ASX listed. We've been around for a long time, since about 1990. And performance of our software is really key, and continuing to innovate is really key. Our customers are quite complex. We have automotive customers who we gather data from them and produce data assets for them. We have our dealerships where we provide software that they use day to day in the workshops. We also have trade partners of our customers who use our software. Being available and online and performant is critical. Being a global company, there is no downtime. There's no opportunities to have maintenance windows. We need to keep our platform running at all times, but we need to continue to innovate and continue to release new features constantly on there. We're an Amazon partner, so we work closely with Amazon and use them to really deliver a lot of our platform. We were an early adopter, worked in 2012 with Amazon to bring our product, which was a CD-based product, into the cloud, innovating for our customers by moving from CDs, where they get a new CD and new sets of data maybe once a month, once a quarter, into constantly delivering information via the cloud. So let's talk about our cloud journey, a bit of a high level of the challenges that we faced, and then we can kind of drill into how did we get out of that hole. So 2012, we went live. We bought an EPC, our electronic parts catalogue, onto the platform, and it was good. By 2016, we'd migrated all of our products, everything into the cloud. All of our production workloads were running. We had over 1,000 EC2 instances running for what was probably 20, 25 different applications. We were starting to get performance issues, starting to get stability issues, and our platform moved from being one which was seen as a platform for innovation into a platform of concern. We were concerned about it. We were still innovating, we were still doing new features, but a lot of what we were thinking about was, this is concerning. As we kind of fast forwarded into 2016, end of 2016 and the start of 2017, some of these reliability issues and performance issues started to get worse. They started to impact customers. And we started to see that the cost of our platform had grown exponentially and was continuing to do so. We'd kind of got to a point where we could see almost our cost doubling every year, and I think our stat was 5% month-on-month growth of Amazon costs. So we'd moved from this platform of innovation now into a platform of risk. A lot of our time wasn't focused on innovating and new features, it was focused on this area of risk and how we could improve and remove these issues. But we've got through that now, and that's the story that we'll tell today. we're back to being a platform of innovation. We've got an optimized platform, and we're building new features and new products, and we're moving forward with confidence. So what did we do? And I guess what was the problem? We had a proliferation of assets. We had over 1,000 DC2 instances, but to be honest, we didn't really know. We'd look at different Amazon consoles at different times. We didn't have a good handle on what those numbers of instances were and why. That was probably our biggest challenge. We didn't know what was what. So we'd look at all of the resources and we'd say, well, what are they? What are they doing? Why have we got all of this cost? How do we reduce it? And we didn't have that understanding that we needed. We had ownership of all of those resources and all of that cost centralised. But the team who owned that cost, owned those resources, they had no real capacity or ability to change what got deployed. And the people who could push deployments and who could increase capacity and resource use, they had no visibility, no ownership, and no accountability of cost and resource use. So there's a bit of an imbalance there for us. We were throwing hardware at problems as well. So as we faced problems, because of the cycles we were under and we were wanting to deliver for customers, and of course there was no real knowledge of cost, we'd throw resources at problems. And over time, that really just built up. It just hid the problem. It was a Band-Aid. And eventually, we got to that point of, we can't really throw any more at this, and throwing more was causing more problems than it was fixing. And one of the big ones is the spend that was there, and that increase in spend, there was no benefit derived from it. We weren't getting more revenue out of that spend. We hadn't delivered innovative products through that spend. It was just spend. It was just cost. We didn't know why. So that was an interesting period. And we couldn't stop. I guess one option sometimes in those times is we'll stop. Let's stop. Let's pause our roadmap. Let's pause our features. But it's not a reality. We had customer deliverables, customer projects. We've got market expectations. We've got our competitors who weren't going to stop. If anything, if they found out we were stopping, they would have gone faster. So we couldn't stop. We had to keep going. What we did is we came up with a bit of a cyclical strategy. And we said, well, what are we going to do? We need transparency, we need to reduce, and then we need to control. And transparency for us was all just about visibility, understanding what was going on in our environments, what things were, what the performance of them was, etc. Reduction, which kind of as we continue morphs into right-sizing, was exactly that. How do we reduce waste? How do we make things right? 1,000 DC2 instances, it didn't sound right. What is right? How do we get back down? And then control, which was all around how do we lock things in? How do we put just enough governance in place that it doesn't hinder the business, it doesn't stop innovation, but it actually supports it and allows it to continue. New Relic, as well as a whole lot of other areas, were really important in this stage. For us, it was all about facts and data, and this is cyclical. I mean, these are a number of the things that we did in that transparency stage, but we would circle back through. So we'd start small, we'd do a small lot of things in transparency, small area in reduction, small area in control, and then we'd start again. One of the first things we did is just put in some basic incident management. We didn't have that kind of concept of incident and problem management, post-incident reviews. We were a development team, a development shop, and so everything was an issue that kind of got put in the backlog to be managed the same way as everything else. And as the issues and the customer impacting issues started ramping up, we needed to change that. So basic incident and problem management gave us that ability to start saying, what actually is the issue? How many issues are we having? What are their root causes? And start focusing in on those. We bought in New Relic infrastructure and APM during this time, and it gave us some really, really rapid insights and got us some really quick wins. About the time that we brought it in, the health map feature came out. What it did for us is brought together all of our assets, combined them up to show us a product view and let us drill into them. So the health map was a great example of what we did in the project and how we were able to kind of have some quick wins. We were looking at the health map and there was an application on it. This is just the New Relic general one, not ours, but there was an application kind of similar up in that top left corner that had about 50 instances running. And we knew that it was a little bit of a problem child. And we knew that we'd been throwing infrastructure at that, but we didn't know it was 50 instances. We drilled into it, and I think they were C4 4XLs or 8XLs, something crazy, and we had lots of them. I was able, having the data there in a really quick way that a lot of people could look at it, we were able to collaborate around it, show that it was an issue, drill in, and then we identified a problem in our deployment tools that wasn't archiving old versions. And I think in about 2 days, we cut 400K out of our bill, annualized. Not for the month, that would have been, but yeah, for annualized for that year. So, that transparency and that rapid transparency allowed us to make some great change. For us, the next stage was we needed to understand a lot more detail about everything. And so we went down an AWS tagging strategy. We hadn't tagged our assets. As we went in, we'd started with a tagging strategy, but we hadn't maintained it. So we revisited that tagging strategy. Came up with a number of criteria around cost accounting, around product ownership, around operational controls. We built that tagging strategy, and I guess we took a bit of a pragmatic approach, and we said, well, we can spend a whole lot of time feeding that back into our deployment tools, waiting for deployments to happen, or it can be really, really practical, and we can just get in a room and smash it out. And so for our first stage, because this was a cyclical strategy, that's what we did, and we literally hand-tagged 1,000 EC2 instances over 36 hours. And immediately we gained insights. Immediately we could start seeing through Cost Explorer, we could start seeing through extracts of just the EC2 views, we could start getting more insights into what was happening, how many of these apps and services we had, what instances were related to them. And that's really been a key for us the whole way through. We're now using that to drive out P&L reporting, product profitability at a really discrete level. So that AWS tagging for us was really, really key. Also key was another bit of an ITIL phase around a configuration management database. We had a number of deployment tools and old manual ways of deploying as well, but we had no central place that we could say, what are all our products and services? We know our products, what are all our applications and services that build towards those? There were views, but we didn't have a central view, so we created a configuration management database with a configuration item matching each of the services. We put all the tags against that, etc. And then we started logging things like incidents and issues and other things against those. Interestingly, it then popped up that we had over 180 discrete services, and it's something that we hadn't known before. It allowed us to change some of our conversations around the complexity of our environment and why some of the changes that we needed to make were so hard. We didn't have 5 products. We had 180 that we needed to deal with in the dev and the ops teams. So that insight, that transparency was great. And it allowed us to start with using New Relic and some of these other changes we'd made. We could start creating performance baselines. Before we were making changes, we could performance baseline, test, make changes, and then ensure they were successful. So that kind of first stage of transparency, absolutely key, and we continue to go through it today. So then comes through to reduction. So New Relic infrastructure and APM, again, were really important for us in this phase. We knew that some products were oversized, but we didn't have that key information that was really easily presented, to drill in and understand what to do. So using APM, using infrastructure, we were able to look at certain apps, understand what their profile was, come up with hypothesis around which type of instance to run those out with the baselines that we now had. We could check what was going on. And it allowed us to move families on instances, reduce the number of instances that we'd provide to products, and just generally cut a huge amount of waste out of the environment. Removing waste was key. Again, with the transparency that the CMDB brought and the insights that New Relic brought, we could actually start seeing resources that weren't really contributing. Abandoned resources, abandoned instances, storage that was still attached, etc. And we could start deleting that and cleaning up. One of the keys that this part built was new conversations in the business. So we'd had a time of issues and of throwing hardware and resources at those issues just to get back to delivering for our customers. What New Relic did for us at that stage, it gave us something that we could look at across the ops teams and the devs teams. And when we said it's an infrastructure problem, let's throw a resource at it, we could bring up APM, we could bring up infrastructure, and we could challenge the assumption. And sometimes it was right. Yep, there's a resource issue. Let's scale up, let's scale out. But sometimes it wasn't right. And it then forced us to have new conversations. It forced us to look at the root cause, and it started reducing the issues that we're having in the environment because we were getting rid of the root cause. We weren't putting Band-Aids across anymore. Education was really key in here as well. We use the AWS cost calculator a lot. We use AWS Cost Explorer. And we started educating our teams on when they needed to do something, how did they talk about cost? And how could they understand cost? And it certainly changed from a view where cost was not understood at all, when now we're having teams proactively come to us using APM, using AWS Cost Explorer, using the calculator and saying, hey, I've got an idea, I want to do this and it's going to reduce the cost of my product. So it's been a real flip going through that education and having that focus on reduction and optimization. I guess at the end, one of the big savings for us was reserving our AWS instances that were running constantly. It sounds simple, but we couldn't do it before, or we weren't confident in putting reservations in place. We knew there was waste. We just didn't know what was waste and what wasn't. And where we put reservations in place, how much of that money we were actually throwing away. So once we'd gone through all those reduction cycles, we then had confidence to say, we know what we need to reserve. We know what benefit that's going to give us. We know that we're not wasting. And that gave us a big reduction driving through those reservations with Amazon. So then to control. Control is all about locking in and continues to be. It's all about locking in the benefits from the other cycles. Ownership and accountability was absolutely key here. And as we set up that configuration management database, working with the dev leads and saying, okay, we've got all these things, we've got these 180 services, who owns what product it's related to, and which dev lead is the owner of those. And then once we gave that accountability, using the transparency, using the reduction, giving them the ownership, giving them the tools to understand their environment and be accountable for it. It's quite difficult at first, but as I said, now we're getting teams looking at their own products and bringing through ways to enhance both the performance and the cost of those products, which is fantastic. I use insights a lot in this space, and we're starting to kind of break it out to others, but that dashboard still sits outside the CEO's office and outside my office. It shows the number of instances that are running at any one time. It shows our EC2 cost for the month, and it shows our total cost for the month. It has our budget, it has our forecast, and it has our actuals. I know now, daily how much that should go up. I think I get 4 or 6 feeds or something from it. So as it increments during the day, Less so now because we're under control, but when we weren't under control, I'd know if it moved by more than something that I should panic. And this has literally saved us tens of thousands of dollars. It moves too much. I jump onto Cost Explorer. I use all the AWS tagging that we had, bring up what's happened, look at the product that's had an increase, tap the developer on the shoulder. Oh, we just did this. I didn't realize it was a problem. We'll reverse it. Things that would have created huge cost overruns and just been sustained previously, we were starting to find within hours and reduce within days. So yeah, having that insight into that ongoing insight into your costs, your budget, etc. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Yeah, Cost Explorer with Amazon, that's been a huge tool that we've used. So we've rolled that out. With our tagging, we've provided different views for the development teams and the product teams. So they're able to look in, they're able to see their costs. We're using Cost Explorer to extract out the costs and start assigning them to the P&Ls of our products and assigning them to the, against the revenue of those products as well. So, just further enhancing that visibility, and then it brings the control with it as well. Change management was really key, and I guess this was probably the one place that we used a bit of a stick. Everywhere else we tried to be pretty light with the governance, and but change management was somewhere that we were pretty strict, and we actually made a call that said, if you have an issue with your product, if you need a change in your product and you need the ops team to help, but you haven't registered it and we don't know about it and it's not tagged, it doesn't exist. You can't get help. We made it really, really easy for people to register it. So we didn't just say no. We said, okay, let us help you get it in. And then once it was in through that change management process, which was really rapid, we were then able to provide support. But it was the one kind of, one area that we felt we needed a stick in that governance process, and that we needed to be a bit harder than everywhere else, versus really just keeping things open and allowing people to do what they needed to do and just catching things as they occurred. And then finally, we started working through the automation of the tagging. So we'd continued for a while, just coming through every week, looking at what had been built and not tagged and kind of going and hand tagging it again. Through the different cycles, we then fed all of the tagging into our deployment tools. So that was now all automated. And I think we got to a point of about 80 to 90% of our cost tagged, and so we were able to account for it. So that was kind of cool. So where are we now? Yeah, a material reduction in the issues that were caused by the platform. And at one stage, we had the stats from our incident management that we put in place. At one stage, we were over 50% of customer issues, performance issues, and potential outages. Over 50% of those were created by the platform. That was the root cause. And we got down to well under 10% after going through the cycle. And just the general number of those reduced significantly as well. We had a material decrease in the Amazon spend. We reduced our spend when we'd annualised where it was going to be versus what we ended up with, around about 40%. But I think what's more important about that is we got back to seeing the platform as value rather than as cost. So yep, we decreased the cost, but what we now had in place, we could see as it was all valuable. We needed it to run our products, and we were optimised. So that was a great result, and we try to keep the spend where it is, but now we know new spend needs to come for new products occasionally, and we're okay with that versus having a big cost overrun. That ownership and accountability put out onto the dev teams, that was great. It's kind of a result on its own, but I think more importantly, it was the empowerment that came with that. For some it was hard, but for some they grabbed it. And all of a sudden, they were responsible for the costs. And that was a good thing. Now they could reduce the costs, they could change the costs, they could understand maybe why things that they'd asked for previously weren't okay, and they could reframe those questions and and get things done. So I think the empowerment that came from giving ownership was fantastic. Key was that we kept delivering. So we didn't stop. We didn't restrict the environment. We didn't kind of have an oh dear moment, let's just clamp down and make everything slower. We allowed people to continue using the platform, to continue to innovate. So we kept all those features and all those innovations going out, but we did get the result that we needed to over that time. And last but not least, it's a sustainable approach. So, and we continue to drive it today. So we continue to go through our cycle of transparency, right sizing or reduction and control. And what we've built, we can continue to build on, and we're confident that we won't slip back, to where we were. So, key learnings has to be a team effort. We had everyone involved. We had our executives involved. We had our ops people, our dev team, our product managers. Everyone was involved in, really a battle to get this under control. And so that's key. You can't do it on your own. You've got to bring a team in, and everyone's kind of got to push together. And the transparency and the visibility that we had allowed people to understand not just what the problem was, but how we were progressing. That AWS tagging strategy is absolutely critical. Whether it's through tagging or whether it's through kind of multiple accounts, while we're moving to things like multi-accounts, we will continue to use tagging because I think it's still really key. But yeah, that tagging strategy is absolutely crucial. Knowing to a minute level of detail and with what's important to you, what your resource is doing is key. So yeah, highly recommend if you don't have that in place or under control, it's something you work towards to get under control because it's critical. The ownership and the accountability in the right place, moving from a centralised team who owned the costs but not the deployments, and flipping that around has really driven a huge amount of change, and it's helped with our success. I think that balance of governance as well, like governance can be a dirty word, process can be a dirty word. It is when it's done wrong. It does stifle innovation when it's done wrong. But on the flip side, not having any of it, it just forces you to spend all your time on stuff that doesn't add value. So a good balance of basic governance, basic process, basic operational controls, and done right, they kind of disappear over time anyway. But they're there, they're working in the background, and they're kind of your safety net. And then good partners. Look, New Relic and Amazon were with us the whole way through, working with us to understand our problem, help us with their tools. They knew what our goals were, they knew what we were trying to do, and they helped us along the journey, so that was great. So what's next for us? Obviously, we need to continually innovate for our customers. Delivering new features and delivering great new things. We've now got the confidence to migrate more workloads into our public cloud. We're looking at different things that we're running in private cloud and saying, well, should we just move them in? We've got the operational controls. We know how to keep it optimized, so let's give it a go. And confidence to give our developers more autonomy. And our teams more autonomy, and with that will come more innovation as they're kind of freed up to experiment on their own. We can do that now because we've got that good balance of governance, we've got that safety net, we've got the visibility, and we know that they'll do the right thing. They've been empowered. They've shown that they can do what needs to be done. But more importantly, we can see what's happening, and we can help them when issues come up. So yeah, that's our journey to optimization. And I think that's it.